and it is my pleasure to introduce Abby Bangser, who will be talking to you about why you, as a tester, should be taking note of platform engineering. So, Abby, over to you.
Thank you very much. I've been known to not need a microphone in the past. If you can't hear me for any reason, give me a wave and I'll slow down or speak up or whatever to make it a bit more comfortable. So thank you all for coming. Really excited that this is an interesting topic to everyone here. It's something that's a new topic for me to present on. But it's not new for me to be presenting on things that are maybe slightly out of the ordinary for a testing conference. And that's because while I started being a tester in 2012, I have seen quality as a part of a much larger ecosystem for a very long time. And I think all of us do. None of us think that the only thing we do is test applications and go home at the end of the day. There's a lot of things going on. And so if you've seen me speak before, you may have seen things around chaos engineering, testing in production, observability, and other things that are maybe auxiliary to the core skills of a typical software tester or QA. And so platform engineering is just a new addition to that ecosystem. And it's always good to understand what's going on out there, even if you don't think that it's going to apply today to your job, it may impact the future. But I can understand not everyone cares deeply about what's going on in other people's worlds. So I'm going to approach this from a slightly different angle for the rest of the talk. And I'm going to introduce 3 reasons why you might care about platform engineering sooner rather than later. First, I'm going to go with the selfish reason. I'm calling it that. You don't have to call yourself selfish. The opportunistic reason and the career path reason. As a part of introducing the selfish reason, we'll talk a bit about what platforms, how they came to be, and why platform engineering has grown the way it has, as well as how you as a QA or a tester may use platforms. So part of the opportunistic reason, we're going to talk a bit about how platforms are an ecosystem within the organization. They give everyone an opportunity to have a voice, and how you and anyone else in the organization can use platforms to provide services and configurations to move forward your agenda at the organization. And then finally, as a part of the career path reason, we're going to talk a bit about what a platform looks like today and how it's being developed and tested, where you might find opportunity there. So starting off with the selfish reason, at the end of the day, internal platforms determine how easy it is for you to do your job. A good internal platform will make your job easier, and it will make it easy to get the tools and the environments and the experiences that you want and that you need. So I'm probably preaching to the choir a bit, but please bear with me. And I'm going to go through that history of the DevOps evolution. We start in a world of dev and ops. We start in a world where there's software development teams that are in charge of writing software. And when they need things other than software, they have to kind of throw it over the wall and then to the ops team. And that ops team will run the code for them, but they'll also produce the infrastructure for them and manage anything other than just writing software code. In this world, if you want a new tool, a new environment, a new anything, you need to make a request to a backlog of another team, and you probably have little to no visibility into when that request will be done, how it will be done, if it will be done, if that's a unique request, if it's a common request, and so on. And so that was creating limitations on teams. And so DevOps came about. We said, instead of having this separate team we have to ask, let's expect the team to manage those responsibilities. Let's ask the team to be able to create the infrastructure they need, manage that infrastructure in development and production, as well as write the software that actually provides business value. And sure, that might include developer rolled people and operator rolled people. But the key here is that the responsibility of developing and operating both infrastructure and software fell to a single team, regardless of who was on that team and what skills were on that team. With this revolution, it unlocked teams to have autonomy. So different teams at scale could be making very different looking applications, mobile, web, and so on. And they might rely on very different parts of software. So Postgres is in there, Kubernetes, Redis, and more, right? This is just an idea here. And each of those teams would have to know how to stand up that infrastructure, how to configure it, how to secure it, how to scale it. And that was DevOps. But I think a lot of us that would articulate as working in DevOps today wouldn't have that experience. You might be like, Abby, that's not DevOps. DevOps is still asking for infrastructure from another team. And that's because in reality, it's not scalable for an organization to ask every team to learn how to configure and manage Postgres at scale, for example, when really they're worrying about a user experience of logging in or something else that they have to do. In the DevOps world, the pure DevOps world, if you wanted that new tool or environment, you'd have to climb that large learning curve to figure out how to provide it for yourself, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, or you probably wouldn't get it because there really wasn't a team out there that had the time, the budget, the interest in providing something for you. And that's why where we're sitting today is we're seeing a lot of organizations sort of fall back to this centralized model. So go ask a centralized team for a database, but we're still going to call the application teams DevOps. They might carry pagers for their software, but we still have this like third-party team we depend on. Now, when people are doing platforms rather than falling back to dev and ops separately, the way that this is working is that the platform team is able to provide things as a service rather than having that backlog that you don't know how long things will take, the request goes to. When you want a new tool or environment in this world, you can either access one on demand. If it's a common request, it's easy to get access to it. You don't have to ask for support from anyone on the platform team. Or you can advocate that it gets added to the platform product roadmap and you get visibility into the intentions of that platform and the kind of short, medium, and long-term goals of how they're going to deliver the value and deliver the experience that they want to. So they're treating this as you as a customer that they actually want to please rather than as someone who's bothering them because they have other things to do and you need something done by them. So platforms, we're talking about this being brought, these requests going into becoming a platform for the organization. What is a platform? Per Gartner, it's a product that serves and enables other platforms, other products and services. And yes, we often might be building a platform we can sell. That's actually our business model, is to act as a platform. You can think of like Stripe for credit cards as a platform for managing credit card requests and payments. But there's also low-level platforms that provide that collection of business and technology for internal use to be able to build on top of and then deliver the value that the business wants to deliver. So I've been building internal platforms. I've actually been on a team that called itself a platform team since 2018. You might, if you watch the hype cycle of platform engineering, not think it existed before about this year, but it has for a very long time, well before 2018. I just have been on one since 2018. While I was on these platform teams, there was a couple of them. Some typical things I would do is I'd look at upgrading servers, managing Kubernetes upgrades or virtual machine upgrades, database upgrades. I'd be creating infrastructure, using infrastructure as code, patterns, and so on. I'd manage and help support delivery pipelines. Those are often mostly controlled by the software teams, but I would help them with kind of the larger picture aspect of things. And I'd also do some researching on newer infrastructure that we may want to support. So DynamoDB becomes popular within AWS. Teams are asking about it. Do we as an organization want to manage that, support that? What does it look like to have that in production? Should we offer it to teams? Those are some of the activities I was doing. Now, how did people use the platforms that I was a part of building? Some of the actions that we built were on demand. They were things that the team didn't have to talk to us for, they just got. So for example, at one of my organizations, we had a lovely test environment, local test environment set up where people could run a command and get their test environment and they didn't have to talk to us. This was something that they could do on their own, on demand. In other cases, it was self-service, but not really on demand. And many of the actions that they needed, they had to use a code base that we owned, that we understood, that was written in languages that they didn't use every day. And they could make a pull request to it by following a run book or like a wiki or following in the footsteps of a previous pull request. And they'd wait for us to merge the pull request and they'd have the resulting infrastructure. But if I'm honest, most of the actions were manual. And I say manual in that they depended on a platform engineer getting involved. Behind the scenes, we might have scripts to be able to make sure that the work we were doing was repeatable and safe and, it would not have human error associated with it. But that was not things that we exposed to our users. They had to ask us via a ticket system somewhere. And it was sort of that dev and ops world of they threw us a ticket, didn't know what was going to happen with it, ping us on Slack, hey, is it coming? And so on. An example here was when we did secrets rotation. That's how we did it. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing that was common across all three of these different types of offerings that we had was that they had to use us. Suckers. We were the internal platform. They had to come to us. They didn't have an option. Some of them did do what we call shadow IT and went off and did their own thing, but good luck getting that to production. Not going to happen. So some people who sped up really quickly at the beginning for a proof of concept slowed down massively when trying to get out to market. The ones who used us from the beginning, they kind of saw a more consistent journey to production. So revisiting that definition of the platform, I would say that we should think about extending that definition to platform engineering. So rather than creating just this set of products and services, we need to think about this as a self-service developer experience. We need to think about how we're building something internally that acts as a platform, just like we've learned to grow and love the cloud providers and them as a platform. You don't wait for an AWS engineer to call you up and tell you your virtual machine's ready, right? It's a self-service, on-demand platform. We should be building engineering those kinds of experiences for our own organization, taking into account our own requirements as a business, security, compliance, and otherwise. And it's about here, the second bit of green here is the increasing the productivity and reducing cognitive load. It's shifting the focus from how do we deliver infrastructure to how do we actually center our users and provide them an experience that they can benefit from and can get what they need and therefore hopefully increase business value. So arguably I was building a platform. I was having shared tools, shared experiences, things people could do. But as a consumer of a platform, what you should be demanding of your platform teams is an experience. And that's what I think this shift from dev and ops to DevOps to platform engineering, why that is actually a progression and not a reversal back to a world of dev and ops. That is the difference that's coming out in today's discussion about platform engineering. And talk a lot more about that. So in a world, just to kind of double down on that experience I had and try and make it a bit more kind of hopefully clear, in a central ops versus a platform engineering space, the team is focused in central ops on reducing their own toil. But in platform engineering, they're thinking about improving the application developer workflow. And sure, you don't want a lot of toil on that team. Hopefully it's a team that can scale not linearly with the organization. So that's not their priority. Their priority is the experience. When you're requesting for an existing service within the central ops world, you have a queue. It's a ticket, it's a pull request, it's somehow dependent on a human picking it up and doing some work. But in platform engineering, there should be a self-service interface, something that you can manage without waiting on a human to manage it. Doesn't have to mean immediate feedback, but it does mean that it's not just an indeterminate, unknown period of time. It's something that will come back in a known period of time. When you're requesting a new offering, something that doesn't yet exist as an offering from your platform, it goes into a backlog in central ops and it's prioritized somehow, somewhere, no one really knows. But in platform engineering, it's treated as a feature request. If you think about the tools that we use every day, there's often public backlogs with people upvoting things and visibility of where things lie on their feature roadmap. And success for central ops is about stable infrastructure, whereas success for platform engineering is increased business value. Doesn't mean stability isn't important, because if your service is going down all the time, it could be a problem. But that's not the key focus. That is a part of the offering from platform engineering. This is the picture one. Sorry, I do a lot of adding when I do slides. So platforms are just software and they need engineering, is basically the summary of this. Users need to be explored and prioritized. You need to be treating this like a product, just like you would any other external product. Platform as a product is a key phrase that's coming out today. The team that builds the platform needs to be a DevOps team, just like the teams who use the platform need to be DevOps teams. They need to develop and operate their own software. It's just, where is that divide of who owns what when they're building and developing it? And so clear boundaries of ownership and domain modeling will allow the platform team to build and operate central infrastructure, while allowing the application teams to be users of that infrastructure and build and operate their own additional value on top of those offerings. Just again, like we do with a cloud offering, we use the virtual machines, but they're managed and supported by a cloud provider. So as a tester or any user of a platform, you should be selfish and ask for what you need. Ask for an experience that goes along with making your lives easier and higher likelihood of providing value, quick value for the business. You should demand that experience, and you should expect self-service and on-demand options. So how? What can you do? Things you can ask for. You can ask for visibility into the roadmap. So a product team that's kind of end user facing will likely have a roadmap that they can talk to as sales engineers about what's coming next, why they're prioritizing one thing over another. And your internal product team, your internal platform team should be able to do the same. No, this is not about getting a date in hand that you add to your Gantt chart and that then you hold them to it if they mess it up. It's about understanding a product roadmap. It's about understanding the priorities today, tomorrow, and in the future, so that you can know if this is something that you need to maybe build yourself as a capability, because it's not yet a priority for the business as a whole. And you're still a DevOps team. You can still build your own stuff if you want to, or you can wait until it comes out as a central offering. You can also ask for common requests to be made self-service and on demand. If you're being handed wikis or you're being asked to do pull requests, ask the question of how to make that something that's more via an API call, where you make a request and you get back the things you care about. So I'd like a database, please. And sure, I have to give you maybe some parameters, maybe about data residency, maybe about size of database, things that might matter to you. But how that gets built, whether that's Terraform or Ansible or a pipeline job, doesn't matter. And how that database infrastructure actually gets run also doesn't matter. What I care about is what's the connection string for me to get to that database? How do I add data to it? How do I manage the index of it? Performance all of a sudden gets split between how you manage the data in your database and how you manage the infrastructure running the database. So this is that clear delineation. And what will benefit you if you're asking for that is having a conversation about the shared responsibility model. So this is an example of a security shared responsibility model from AWS. GCP provides the same thing. If you've ever gone through compliance with something like PCI for credit cards or SOC 2 or otherwise, you've probably looked at these before. And what they're trying to say is that, of course, the user can't be responsible for the physical security of a region in AWS because we don't know where they are. But you know what we are responsible for is that when we request data from the database, we encrypt it over the wire. Because actually, AWS has no responsibility for that. They're only worrying about the running infrastructure and under the scenes. And making it very clear where the responsibility lies means that you can have, it's like an API. You can have ownership over the domains that matter to you and that you can actually control. So you can ask for the same thing from your platform team. What is it that you control? What is it I control? If I can't ask for a certain version of database, well, then I'm not responsible for upgrading that database. You are. If I can ask for a certain version of the database, then who's in charge of that upgrade process? How do I know when you want to deprecate something? How am I in charge of patching that database, right? So setting that contract between the two and understanding where responsibility lies is key to the success of this. So if I hadn't won you over on being selfish, I might win you over on opportunistic reason to care about platform engineering. And that's because platforms are a way to disseminate what you care about around the organization. And in this room, I'm going to talk about quality. So it might be about sustainability. It might be about cost, concerns. It depends on who you are, what you care about. But all of a sudden, you can disseminate this around. And so the thing that's really made this popular and key, and I think part of why platform engineering has become popular recently, is the Team Topologies book, where they particularly call out interaction models. And you can see here that the platform team has an as-a-service model with other teams. It's providing services. But that doesn't mean that you start as a service. There's this evolution of team topologies at the bottom. In particular, you're seeing that you start with tight collaboration before you get to as a service. And this is actually something that we've been doing for years as quality professionals. You start by doing the testing yourself, figuring out where the risks are, figuring out what you need to do to actually test this stuff. Then you start to identify opportunities to improve that quality and design a team structure around it, which you then work on with the team to execute that whole team quality goal. And eventually you may find yourself in a role where you're doing more of the building of tools and processes rather than the actual hands-on testing, depending on your interests and depending on your organization. But you start to move from that tight collaboration, that ownership of work, through to that as a service support of a much larger group of people getting the same benefit you could have done as a single person. So you're multiplying it. And so like an example that you might want to offer, I told you this was something my previous platform team did, but I don't think this is every platform team has done it. It's provide a test environment as a service. So you might have a CLI tool, or you might have a user interface, or you might have something else where you can create a test environment. And you only give people the option to ask about the things they care about. So they care about what version of the software, and they care about how long the environment should live for. And you might have rules that no environment lives for more than a week, cost savings, right? Or whatever. And this time the TTL, or time to live, is 1 day. That's what I'm requesting as a user. When I make that request, I'm not waiting on anyone for environment B to be refreshed with the version I've asked for. I'm getting back a URL I can go to, and I'm getting back any additional information that I might need. So I might have all of a sudden a file stored on my local computer that has the configuration on how to see data in the database for that environment, where I can load that into a database visualizer and be able to use it. This is the type of experience that you can hope for as a tester, and you can potentially help build by designing what is this experience and working with people who maybe have the experience and skills with the software to write this. So I'm going to get more into this, because what I guess part of this is being opportunistic to disseminate your message as a quality professional, to codify the quality into the platform offerings, and to make sure that tooling is provided that will enable quality. So getting test environments will enable easier testing, exploratory testing. That might be something you want to focus on. Again, how do you do that? You might want to offer services. If you're offering services, they can be linting, mutation testing, chaos engineering, observability, test environments, things that you can actually give to people as, or do for people as a part of their development pipeline. But not everything has to be in standalone service. Often that pipeline is already doing something. It's already providing something, often templates to get started. Reviewing those templates and making sure they build a test suite into every example application can make a world of difference when a new team spins up. All of a sudden they have test automation built into their working proof of concept, right? So have a look at templates and see if you can have an outsized impact. And finally, you can evolve the offering. So we talked about environments as a service, but you can be a user of it, but you can also help give feedback on it. What's the data sanitation strategy of those databases that you're building? Like, how is that going to work? Are you sure PII is not slipping in there? Is the data not realistic enough? Because we're definitely not PII at risk, but the value of it is very low. You can talk about getting telemetry. So don't just give me an environment, give me a way to view the logs from that environment. The environment's not enough, right? And so you can ask for more feedback from that. And you can think about maybe asking for a way to make it really easy to raise an issue against that environment. Maybe that extends the time to live so that people can recreate it in that environment. Maybe there's other knock-on effects, but dream big about how you can evolve an offering to build quality into it. And the final reason, if I haven't got you yet, is the career path reason. The reality is that platforms are a growing domain and they require testing. I'm seeing a lot of requests right now coming in for platform product owners. And I think it's only a matter of time until we start talking about the quality of the platform that we have. And I think testing is going to become a big part of it. And that's because platform engineering is engineering. There's a saying by Charity that it's vendor engineering. It's piecing things together, but doesn't stop it from being complex or valuable and having business logic that needs to be tested. It has the same delivery cycle. It has the same need for holistic testing. The thinking about what it is you're trying to deliver, thinking about the experience, and thinking about how to validate that, both in an automated and an exploratory and a production point of view. And that's because we are moving towards platforms and APIs. I was telling you my experiences since 2018 of building kind of code templates and services that really we're just another more advanced version of a ticketing system, but we are moving towards platform APIs, and they are just APIs, they are just software. We need to think about the user research associated with our product roadmap. We need to think about the testing of that business logic behind the API, testing of how that API experience works, and what's actually happening in production. Are people getting the value that we think that they should? So broaden your career options, pioneer in a relatively unexplored domain. There aren't a ton of people in this domain in the testing world right now. And define what quality means for internal platforms. Get into that conversation, have that conversation about it. To do this, you'll likely need to upskill a bit in platforms in general. Having a look at things like test automation for infrastructure might be really interesting for you. Pretty bare bones. You'll get really sad about it if you're a software automation tester. You might need to get comfortable in the command line. It's a very big part of being behind the scenes on internal platforms, and learning those skills can be really helpful. But it doesn't always have to be about code and getting down and dirty in that way. You can also just join communities that are talking about this, asking questions, and just learning the terminology. Try to throw some out there today so that you have a starting point. And of course, you can just start building your own tools. You can dream up what you would love to have and see if you can start building kind of rough around the edges versions for yourself and for your team. And eventually you can look to commoditize those on an internal platform. It's not just the general skills of platforms though. You might want to learn about your platform. Doing code reviews, the same way you learned how to code if you've gotten into test automation, where you might do code reviews or pair programming, do the same with the platform code. But it's again, not just code. Think about what user researching looks like for internal platforms. Sit with team members of yours and figure out where people are having a hard time getting what they need, and think about what kind of features you might ask for from that platform team. So you probably have some sort of a central team, even if they're not operating behind APIs and things yet. And just start exploring where backlogs and team charters are and what people would be expecting to deliver internally. If they don't have a team charter that seems to cover, if there are not teams that cover these kinds of experiences, start asking questions of who should own that experience. Where should that live? Try and just get that kind of surfaced and visible to everybody. So in summary, platform engineering is not testing. We know this. Sorry, I came to a testing conference and talked about something that's not testing. Yes, I am. Boo. Yes, platform engineer. Yes, it is just another hype cycle. It's the same as observability and DevOps and Agile, and it's going to go by the wayside of marketers. I'm sorry, but there is something there, I promise. And platforms are unexplored and historically underinvested in. So why would you want to get involved, right? Why would you want to spend your time getting into another part of the industry that people continue to treat like a cost center? Well, it's not testing, but we do know that quality is a part of that bigger ecosystem, and we depend on platforms. So understanding what we can expect from them and asking for more is important. It is a hype cycle, but with every hype cycle, there are nuggets of greatness. No matter how much you capitalize that A of Agile, there's still benefit under Agile. No matter how much you add sec test, blah, blah, blah in the middle of DevOps, DevOps is still valuable in and of itself. And you can and should build on this. And yes, it's unexplored, but we were built to explore. And the domain is growing, and we can get involved and have a voice about what we can expect so that we can make sure quality is a part of the conversation from the beginning. Thank you. I think I hit time. Do I have any time for questions, or if I barely hit the time?
Well, seeing that you put me in a very, very good mood, and very well known for my my kindness. I have no limits today, so yeah, we got 2 more minutes for it.
All right, 2 minutes. Does anyone have any questions about anything I've said? Yeah.
So we're moving towards platform APIs. Is that very much loads of bespoke offerings, or are we aiming towards some kind of standardization, or is that a long way off?
Yeah, great. So the question was around, is there standardization around these platform APIs, or are we still everybody's building their own in their own organization in a bespoke way? So everybody says they want the Heroku experience, except I promise you there's a company out there that will give it to you for a pretty penny if you want it. They're still out there selling Heroku. That's not working for organizations at scale. So what I've been seeing around the industry right now is that it's that vendor engineering. It's about bringing together lots of different tools that can help different parts of the organization be successful, bring them into one kind of centralized way of working for the team. So there's a term called the thinnest viable platform. which is different than minimum viable, which I'll have a fight all day about this. This is my current hill to die on. Minimum viable is how little can you make it. Thinnest viable is how little can you keep it. How can you stay floating above all of the new commodities that are coming out into the market as the different tools improve and start to do some of the things you used to have to customize? You should absorb those and reduce your need to customize as much as possible. So that's what I'm seeing now, is that everyone's trying to build that thinnest viable experience above the top. And that is staying bespoke because every company has different requirements, but the underlying pieces of the platform are becoming much more standardized as things become more commoditized. So yeah, no worries. Sorry, I probably talked for the whole 2 minutes, but if anyone else has one more question.
One question, how do you manage cost and this kind of like bespoke requests are coming, like people are requesting for new platforms, so you might get a big AWS bill, so how do you manage that?
Yeah. Absolutely. So how do you manage cost on a platform with all these requests and all these different bespoke needs? And particularly cloud computing can go up if you're starting to give test environments out to anyone who might ask, right? That's a part of the platform logic. So that's where, when my example of a test environment time to live being 1 day, you can build cost into the offerings that you're doing. You can build behind your API. If someone goes and asks for a 10 terabyte database for development, you'll be like, no. That is above the limit. Please ask for permission. And when you get an ID, put it here and we'll make it for you, or whatever, right? So that's why we need these bespoke layers inside the organization that track those things, because there are different business requirements for different organizations. So.